These are 100 of the most disturbing movies ever made, from gross experimental films to movies with bizarre storylines and extremely graphic scenes. These films go as far as depicting torturous and explicit content, and some even containing real illegal footage. For the sake of YouTube's rules and your sanity, I've tried to explain each movie and give you an idea of what it's about without going into too much detail about the graphic scenes. And trust me, there were many. So, without any further ado, let's begin. Necromantic. Right out of the gate, this film sets the tone for just how crazy and disturbing this list is going to get. And we're not talking about The Conjuring. Directed by Georg Buttkaray, Necromantic is an erotic exploitation horror film centered around necrophilia. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because it's a famous paraphilia involving the dead. Attraction to the dead, if you will. The main character, Robert, is a young guy with a wife who's even more deranged than him. Robert works for a company that specializes in cleaning up public spaces after traffic accidents as well as other fatal accidents, hence giving him the opportunity to be close to corpses. Robert and his deranged wife, or girlfriend, we don't really know, but I'll keep calling her his wife. They both live in an apartment which is decorated with pictures of famed killers, human bones, and jars containing human parts which are preserved. One day, Robert's scene cleaning agency is called to deal with a body which was found floating in a lake. Robert seizes the opportunity and secretly brings it home. He presents it to his wife, and then they commit some very inappropriate acts with it. I'll keep it at that. The next day, Robert gets fired from his agency because his uniform stinks, and he's a weirdo who nobody likes. Robert returns home and tells his wife Betty that he was fired, and Betty obviously gets mad at him because it's his fault they can't get more corpses now. After verbally punching the hell out of her pathetic man, Betty takes their dead lover, aka the corpse, with her and leaves Robert alone. Robert then has an emotional breakdown and goes crazy. Later, Robert takes some pills before falling asleep and experiencing a dream of him being half a corpse. After waking up, it is nighttime, and Robert leaves his apartment to hire an escort, and he takes her to a cemetery where he fails to perform, so she laughs at him. Because she laughed at him, Robert kills her, and then yeah, you know what the movie is about. The next morning, Robert kills one more person before ending it. Sometime later, we can guess whose figure in high heels is shown digging up Robert's grave. Totally not his suspicious nymph wife. Very unlikely. Cannibal. Cannibal is a movie directed by Marion Dora. The film centers around a mentally disturbed man who will be known as the Man. He has cannibalistic thoughts and tries to find someone online to live them out with, making a deal with a man known as the Flesh who agrees to them. Because of how deranged and sick this whole movie is, I'm going to give you just a slightly unsettling recap of it. A not fun fact about this movie is that it was based on the true story of Armin Moose, who killed and ate a man whom he met on the internet. This movie was so ominous that it was made illegal in Germany, banned in March of 2006, just before it could make it to theaters. Continuing, the man meets with people he had chatted with online, but he either rejects them or is rejected the moment they find out he is serious about it. Eventually, he finds the Flesh, a man who volunteers to it. The Flesh travels to the Man from Berlin, and the two bond quite quickly. After their fun, the Flesh decides that it's time for him to die. I'm not going to explain the details of the movie from here on because it is extremely graphic and obviously not allowed on YouTube. But to give you an idea, the man does some really bizarre things and records them all. And at the end of the movie, we can see the man taking care of himself while watching the recording. The movie is horribly gory and graphic. You can see everything on screen, and it really gives you the chills. Cannibal Holocaust. Cannibal Holocaust is a movie directed by Ruggero Deodato, which starts to feel like a badly done documentary. Yeah, it gets graphic. It starts with some dude named Harold Monroe, who leads a rescue team into the Amazon rainforest to search for a group of filmmakers who have gone missing while filming a documentary on local cannibal tribes. They manage to recover lost documentary footage shot by the missing film crew and discover the crew's disturbing actions, violence, and cruelty toward the indigenous tribes. They manage to recover lost documentary footage shot by the missing film crew and discover the crew's disturbing actions, violence, and cruelty toward the indigenous tribes. The final scenes revealed that the crew staged atrocities to sensationalize their film, ultimately leading to their violent deaths at the hands of the tribes they exploited. Unlike most movies, Cannibal Holocaust actually killed several animals on camera. Because of the realistic gore, several countries banned the film, and the director was temporarily arrested in Italy on suspicion of killing the actors. Martyrs. Martyrs is a psychological horror movie directed by Pascal Laugier. It's about a woman who seeks revenge against people who harmed her as a child. The movie is violent and disturbing. Our main character, named Lucy, escapes from a slaughterhouse where she was brutally tortured for a year. She's then placed in an orphanage where she befriends another girl named Anna. Years later, she believes she found the people who tortured her, and she kills them before calling her friend Anna. While waiting for Anna to arrive, a demonic woman attacks Lucy. Lucy has several hallucinations and maybe even psychosis and imagines all of this, but despite the murders she just committed, Anna helps her anyway. Much to Anna's horror, she finds out that the mother Lucy tried to kill is still alive. So, Anna tries to help her escape, but Lucy catches them and kills the mother. Lucy is then again attacked by the demonic woman, except Anna only sees Lucy hurting herself and acting crazy. Anna accidentally finds a chamber in the house where Lucy claimed the family she killed tortured victims, and she realizes her friend wasn't entirely crazy when she sees a girl who's barely responsive there. Unfortunately for them, things turn darker when Anna discovers a secret group that tortures people to learn about the afterlife. They believe extreme pain brings people closer to the truth about death, and Anna becomes their next victim. Atroz. The movie starts with two men who were arrested after a car accident. When police search their car, they find a camera containing videos of torture. As investigators watch the footage, they discover more horrifying acts committed by the men. In the beginning, we, the viewers, see horrifying footage which I won't describe here at all. The film reveals how one of the men suffered childhood trauma and abuse from his own father for being gay. His father tried to set his son up with an escort to cure him, but that didn't work, and his mother discovered he keeps wigs and some adult toys. So, as a young boy, he's forced to endure humiliation, even gets essayed by his father, and in the end, it's revealed how he also murdered his parents, and was in a relationship with his own sister before accidentally killing her. Anyway, the killer is forced to watch these humiliating tapes of himself, and it is shown to us how all of that trauma led to his current actions. The whole movie is a disturbing mess which shows us extreme gore and graphic violence. Atroz is full of uncensored cruelty, which you can see on screen. MD Pope 1. MD Pope stands for Most Disturbed Person on Earth, and it's basically a shockumentary type of movie. There's more than one, and it's been compiled by MD Thomas Extreme Cinema Gore. I believe there are 3 of these movies out there, but today we'll focus on the content of the first one. Quick warning that it is really extreme. All the footage consists of clips from the internet that have been compiled together to make one big movie. I did my research online, and this compilation is illegal to watch in over 100 countries. I would suggest you don't watch this for your own mental health's sake and legal consequences, since it has real-life footage mixed in. I was going to read some of the content listed in the About section of this movie, but on second thought, it's really disgusting, so I won't. Pig. Pig is a 2010 horror film directed by Adam Mason. It's about an insane man who finds out one of his victims has escaped. He recaptures the poor woman and murders her, before bringing her remains back to his junk-filled camp. Another woman is seen chained up. A guy then uses her in many ways, and brings this character to his self-named R-word pen, so she's treated like an animal. We then see a mentally handicapped woman, referred to as Baby, who's pregnant and is kept locked in a cage. Alas, we can also assume she's pregnant with his baby. His third victim is also chained, until he's used for target practice. He then has some vile acts done to him. To give you an idea of what kind of acts I'm referring to, one of the lines of dialogue is, and I quote, "I've never stuck a screwdriver." Yeah. Rubber's Lover. Rubber's Lover is a movie directed by Shozin Fukui. It is often treated like a prequel to the director's previous movie, 964 Pinocchio, which had some of the same disturbing horror themes. The movie is black and white, and it's about a messed up group of scientists who conduct psychic experiments on kidnapped and innocent people. It features action, science fiction, and body horror, which is difficult to look at. The scientists treat their subjects like lab rats who they snatch off the streets. They use all kinds of methods, along with drugs, to mess with their subjects' heads. They subject their patients to gruesome scientific tortures that often end in brutal deaths. After continued failure and pressure from the company to cancel the project, they pursue one last experiment using one of their own as a test subject, resulting in one big yikes. It deserves its place on the list of Japan's disturbing cyberpunk horrors. The Substance. The Substance is a body horror film written and directed by Kohali Farjau. The movie follows an older woman who uses illegal drugs from the black market to alter her appearance after she gets fired due to getting older. Our main character, Elizabeth, orders the substance from the black market and injects herself with the single-use serum. Then, a younger woman named Sue emerges from her back. You can imagine the mental picture. It's quite an uncomfortable scene for us to watch. Anyway, the two bodies must switch every 7 days. The inactive body remains unconscious. The other body is fed with daily injections of stabilizer fluid extracted from the original body. If not injected, then Sue will deteriorate. Our main character regains her fame, but sometime before a big show, she runs out of the stabilizer fluid. At the end, Sue kills Elizabeth, and without Elizabeth to stabilize her young form, she begins to deteriorate and drenches the audience and studio in blood when things go horribly wrong during the show she was supposed to host. Old Boy. Old Boy is a film directed by Park Chan-wook. It's about a man named Oh Dae-soo who's imprisoned for 15 years without knowing who imprisoned him. When he's suddenly released, Oh Dae-soo seeks revenge and goes through all kinds of thoughts and what-ifs, trying to figure out who might have imprisoned him. Before being captured, Oh Dae-soo had a wife and a young daughter, which is a detail I want you to remember for later. Dae-soo was drugged, hypnotized, and held captive for years. His only connection to the real world was his television, which he frequently had on. After his release, Dae-soo tries to find his daughter, but learns that she was adopted and has left the country. He teams up with a young woman named Mido, who eventually falls in love with him, but not when he literally tries to essay her at first. Dae-soo follows a messy trail of clues, and he discovers that his imprisonment is part of a plan orchestrated by a man named Lee Woo-jin, who has a serious grudge against him. Mido and Dae-soo sort of become lovers, but Dae-soo confirms his pursuit of finding out why he was imprisoned. At the end, we get a nasty plot twist where we find out that Mido is Dae-soo's daughter, and Dae-soo is so distressed to find this out, he harms himself in a gruesome way and begs Woo-jin to not reveal the truth to Mido. Woo-jin reveals that he used hypnosis and manipulated Mido and Oh Dae-soo's whole meetup, revealing that he's the sick fellow who was his own sister's lover. And all of the brutality Dae-soo was subjected to was because he once touched Woo-jin's late sister as a teenager. Slaughter Disc. Slaughter Disc is a pornographic horror film directed by David Quitmeyer. Due to being a weird gooner with a clown adult content addiction, our main character Michael misses a date with his girlfriend Carrie. Fed up with him, Carrie dumps him. In full gooner fashion, Michael, aka Mike, then goes to a shop to search for more weird content to get off to. Mike asks the clerk about Andromeda, who's apparently an adult star so extreme the obscenity laws prohibit the store from selling her content. In some shady and very unprofessional manner, the employee tells him he can probably find her films online. At home, Mike orders one of Andromeda's DVDs. The video depicts something that I can't talk about on YouTube, but it was bad enough to disturb even Mike. A few days later, Mike decides to watch another one of Andromeda's disturbing movies. Now, due to being a weird loser who can't even do his job, Mike gets fired, and we can all guess what he does right after being fired. Yep, he watches more disturbing adult content. One of Mike's friends, John, calls Mike and asks Mike to go to a bar. Mike goes, leaving Andromeda to glare at him as he leaves. John doesn't show up, and then Mike gets drunk alone. Unable to sleep, Mike watched another one of Andromeda's DVDs, and much to his horror, sees some really disturbing stuff on there. Utterly stunned, Mike believes what he saw was fake until he is led to John's remains by images on his television, and then gets a call from Andromeda. The movie's a lot. Ensuring Your Place in Hell. Ensuring Your Place in Hell is another shockumentary movie, and is basically a collection of independent shorts from the 90s. The movie was put together by an unknown person and uploaded to many sketchy online websites. The information section, aka the About section of the movie, is the following. Number 1. A Guide to Grave Robbing for Morons, which we have talked about in previous videos. Number 2. Cooking with Huck Botko. 6 shorts from Huck Botko, who wrote The Last Exorcism. The first 4 shorts are cooking related, where Huck plays this character who hates his family. Number 3. Mortuary of the Dead. Shot in a mortuary by some guy who seems like the friend of someone who works there. Their whispers are barely audible, which goes with the disturbing VHS quality visuals of body parts. And number 4. Exploding Varmints. Made by a bunch of hunters who go about exploding a variety of animals that prowl farmlands. Green Inferno. Green Inferno is another horror and cannibal film, again directed by Eli Roth, who really has a knack for making disturbing movies. The movie is very graphic, so don't watch it unless you have a strong stomach. The movie follows a group of college activists who travel to the Amazon rainforest to stop a corporation from destroying an indigenous tribe's land. After managing to draw attention to the issue, the group becomes stranded due to a plane crash. Then, ironically, they end up near the village of the very tribe they were trying to protect, a tribe of cannibals. The group is captured and subjected to gruesome rituals, violent human sacrifices, and cannibalism. They get turned into dinner and suffer as they desperately try to escape. The movie is brutal, and the group are fed some of their own friends. I'm not going to dive in too deeply into what happens in Green Inferno, but just know that it took inspiration from Cannibal Holocaust, and Eli Roth being the director is more than enough of a quick warning. By the end of the movie, one of the girls who managed to escape lies to everyone and the government and says everyone else died on the plane. The indigenous tribe was friendly, and she's the sole survivor. Mad God. Mad God is a horror movie directed by Phil Tippett. The plot follows an unnamed armored man, referred to as the Assassin, who enters the underworld. The movie doesn't really have any dialogue, so it relies heavily on its disturbing imagery and nightmarish creatures to tell its story. The Assassin goes through various hellish environments, each with a lot of creatures, odd machinery, and disturbing landscapes. The Assassin's mission seems to be to plant a bomb in one of the secret facilities. On his mission of planting the bomb, he lives through many bizarre scenes, which include experiments, humanoid beings, and a pit filled with strange, suffering creatures. The Assassin is subjected to traps throughout the movie. There is also a scene we see of a surgeon operating on him. Truly painful to watch. The movie is good, but has a lot of disturbing visuals. Fetus Munchers. What the fuck? Fetus Munchers is the third shockumentary type of movie I'm going to talk about. It has been published on multiple sketchy sites on the internet. It was put together by John Gudo, Fetus Muncher, and it surprisingly doesn't include any fetus munching. Now, it still contains vile content involving gore, scat, violence, animals, etc. Please note that just like the other shockumentary which was mentioned in this video, this contains borderline illegal and real footage. I advise against you watching it. Once again, there's really no safe way for me to explain what this movie includes, and I can't go over the full summary here. All I can say is that it's truly horrible. Fetus Munchers 2. If you thought this ends with just one shockumentary, then you and I were both wrong. Apparently, there is a second film, and it's even worse than the first, with the same kind of disturbing content pushed even further. Fetus. I'm noticing a pattern. Fetus is a low-budget gore film directed by Brian Paulin. It's about our main character, Kevin, whose wife passed away while giving birth to their first child, who also doesn't make it. Devastated and overtaken by the grief of his loss, Kevin cannot cope with the situation and grows obsessed with finding a way to talk to his wife by any means possible, basically losing his mind. The movie is a mess. The plot becomes chaotic, and I don't know what the hell I just watched. Still, it contains a lot of disturbing content despite how low budget it may be. This one is honestly a hit or miss. Just by reading some of its reviews, people either love or hate it. Suicide Club. This is a horror film directed by Sion Sono. The film takes place over 6 days with footage from a fictional pop group named Dessert, opening and closing the film. The story begins with a concert held by Dessert, in which they perform a J-pop song titled Mail Me, and sometime afterwards, all teenage schoolgirls die. Shortly after, at a hospital, 2 nurses also die. Both of these cases were self-inflicted. Eventually, 3 detectives are informed about a link between the events thanks to a hacker. One of the main characters, Mitsuko, is on her way home when she gets hit by her boyfriend named Masa, who falls on her from a roof. She's then questioned by the police, but at the end of the movie, and one of the detectives recognizes it because he remembers she had a tattoo. After that, Mitsuko is at the train station, and the detective grabs her hand, but she pulls away. The train pulls into the station, and then as the train pulls out, the ending credits begin, in which the group Dessert announce their disbandment. Anyway, the movie is quite disturbing and has some brutal essay scenes. It relies on gore and shock value more than structure, hence the messy recap. Infidious. Infidious is a movie directed by Giulio De Santi. In it, one of our main characters named Barabba tries to save his brother from a life of crime. Meanwhile, Massimo, who's also a main character, deals with the death of his wife who was killed in a snuff film. Pretty dark and messed up, yeah. That's basically how the whole film is. Massimo is haunted by images of his wife's violent death at the hands of the criminal gang which has been making snuff films. Massimo seeks revenge. He wants to find his wife's killers and avenge her after how she was violated for the snuff film. Baraba is a convict who was just released from prison. He made a promise to his father to start a new life with his brother named Spacho, to leave their life of crime behind and build a new one. Unfortunately, Baraba finds out that his brother is involved in the gang which makes the movies. Because of this, Baraba tries to change things the only way he knows how to, with violence. Trauma. Trauma is a horror and exploitation film directed by Lucio A. Rojas. Right off the bat, this movie takes the cake for being disturbing. The movie starts off with a woman who's restrained to a chair. There's a bunch of soldiers in the room, and we see a man who appears to seemingly be the leader order one of the soldiers to bring the woman's son over. After this, he forces the boy to... The movie then skips time, and we are shown 4 young ladies who decided to go on a trip to a rural area. Unfortunately, they end up as victims and get brutalized, attacked by a man and his son. If you liked a Serbian film, then you're gonna like Trauma too. This movie is honestly horrible, and according to the director of the movie, he has based it off of real events of what happened in Chile, which is truly horrifying to think of, especially when you keep in mind that what he said on screen falls short of what really happened. Honestly, this movie itself deserves a whole video. Grotesque. Grotesque is an exploitation horror film directed by Koji Shiraishi, which, without a single doubt, lives up to its name because of how graphic it is. A young innocent couple gets kidnapped by a sadist. They literally wake up shackled in a basement and then get tortured and degraded by him. He essays both of them and then forces them to watch each other as he does it. To make matters worse, the sick sadist will provide them with medical care and look after them so that they live longer and he can continue to torture them. The torture is honestly horrific and too much to talk about because the mad sadist doesn't stop. The young couple doesn't survive. In fact, they are tortured to the very end, and the movie is awfully graphic. It literally lives up to its name. I don't recommend watching it unless you can stomach all of that. Angel Guts, High School Co-ed. Angel Guts is a series of 6 films, also known as pink films. Japanese pink films are basically movies where the theme features a lot of erotic and sexual elements, exploitation, drama, you get it. Angel Guts is based on the manga series by Takashi Ishii, and now we're going to begin talking about the films with brief summaries of their content. In High School Co-ed, Kawashima, Kajima, and Sadakuni are 3 guys who spend their days essaying young girls. Kawashima, one of those brutes, has a younger sister named Megu, who doesn't know her brother is who he is. While he's out with his sister, Kawashima and Megu stumble at the sight of 2 gangster buddies who are planning to essay a girl named Nami. Since he's with his sister and he doesn't want her to see that happen, Kawashima stops the guys and ushers Nami home. This causes a problem among his effed up group, and one of his friends, aka Kajima, tells Kawashima that to make up for it, he has to Nami. As you can predict, he and his sister end up in a bad situation after this. Angel Guts, Red Classroom. Red Classroom shows us the story of how a guy named Teruro is a writer for an adult magazine. He watches an obviously disturbing adult movie with a school setting, and being the weirdo that he is, he somehow gets off on that and becomes obsessed with the actress named Nami. Speaking of Nami, the creeper accidentally meets her by chance as he arrives for a shoot at a hotel, and Nami is the receptionist. She hesitantly agrees to talk with him, and later on, Nami takes the creeper to her room. She starts making moves on him, and she confesses that the film was real and that she did not consent to be in it. The creeper, by the way, tries to play the good guy and tells Nami he wants to help her. Real bright for a guy who's in an abusive relationship with his girlfriend while also forming a relationship with the traumatized Nami. Angel Guts simply gets more disturbing. Angel Guts, Nami. Buckle up, because this one will make you hold on to your brain cells as you question how depraved the main character is growing. Nami, our main character, works for a magazine where she writes articles about SA victims. At some point, she's doing an interview with a stripper, but then starts watching a strange adult show. She leaves before the end, but of course, that's not before she gets disturbed by some creepy weird guy who insists that she stays. The next day, Nami visits another SA victim who she wants to talk to, and takes pictures before she meets the creepy man from the club where she was yesterday. The weirdo tells her he works for a director, and he makes a remark about how Nami is growing quite the obsession with SA stories. Further in the movie, Nami continues to dig deeper with interviews and research. All of that, unfortunately, rather than showing her how sick, depraved, and dangerous the world is, ends up turning her on, and she starts having disturbing fantasies. If you want to know how this film ends, then you have to watch it yourself. Angel Guts, Red Vertigo. You might have noticed that I skipped Angel Guts' Red Porno. which is literally because that film is just hardcore pee. Red Vertigo is, well, just as weird and disturbing. In it, Nami works as a nurse who's constantly getting harassed by her perverted and trash patients. Anywho, after another upsetting event, Nami comes home but finds her cheating photographer boyfriend with the model he takes pictures for his adult magazine. Heartbroken, Nami runs away, but then literally gets hit by a car, and the driver takes her as his prisoner, and they form a relationship, let's say. You have to watch it yourself to see how weird it gets. Angel Guts, Red Flash. In this one, Nami is a photographer who's on the set of an adult movie, filming a disturbing scene between a teacher and his student. She then starts feeling uncomfortable because, seeing this, she gets a flashback of having a similar experience like this in her own past. Muraki, the editor of the weird movie, notices how uncomfortable she's got and tries to comfort her, but Nami freaks out and runs away from him. Nami then turns to her girlfriend, I guess, for support and comfort, but finds out that she's been cheating on her. So, like any heartbroken adult, she goes out to get drunk. After waking up from her heavy blackout, Nami is absolutely terrified to find the dead body of a man. She runs into the editor guy she ran away from, Muraki, and they try to find out what happened together. Nami becomes a suspect in a murder investigation, and compared to the other Pink films, I think this one is less disturbing, but keep in mind that this still does contain essay and whatnot. Mai-chan's Daily Life. Mai-chan's Daily Life is originally an Eroguro manga series created by Waita Uziga, but it has a movie adaptation directed by Sado Sato. And let me tell you, the exploitation and dehumanization of this film is insane. Mai-chan, who we'll just call Mai for simplicity's sake, is our main character. She's immortal and manages to land herself a job as a maid in a mansion where she quickly realizes nothing is normal. Mai is forced to abide by her perverted employer's twisted wishes, no matter how degrading and disgusting they are. Since Mai is immortal, she can regenerate parts of her body, and so she becomes a victim of grotesque exploitation, violence, and torture. And we get to see it all on screen. The screen doesn't spare you any details, and it's very heavy on shock factor and gore. Zero Day. Zero Day is a film directed by Ben Caccio. The story revolves around a duo planning a school shooting through the perspective of a video camera. Our two main characters, Andre and Calvin, announce their intention to attack their school and cause a massive school shooting. Both of them are troubled teens. Andre is violent and hateful. Meanwhile, Calvin struggles with a big dose of depression. The film is portrayed in a found footage style, so we get to see everything through their video camera. Things such as how they plot the school shooting, how they hide it from their families, slowly planning their attack after Andre steals weapons from his father. The plot continues just as you would expect it to, with a massive massacre involving the deaths of students shown to us through security cameras. Andre and Calvin kill about 11 students and wound many others. Faces of Death. Faces of Death is a horror mondo type of film directed by John Allen Schwartz. Since it's a mondo film, pathologist Francis B. Gross tells the viewer, aka us, about how he's interested in the transitional periods of life and death because of a recurring dream he's having. Gross is a surgeon, so due to his desensitization to grotesque deaths and whatnot, he has compiled footage of these deaths to understand them, hence the name Faces of Death. The footage includes things like alligator attacks and many other animal deaths. Gross also narrates over recordings of assassinations. An assassin named Francois Jordan is interviewed, and he admits that he kills solely for money. Our very mentally stable man, aka Gross, introduces the types of killers. Then we see a gunfight between a SWAT team and an armed criminal. And you wish it would just end here, but no. Footage of animals dying because of pollution is shown, and after that, we see footage of children in impoverished villages. Overall, the man is very unhinged, and we get to see every disturbing detail of his footage on camera. The film is very graphic. It depicts violence, corpses, animals, murders, all of that. Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom is a psychological horror film directed by Michael Powell. The film is about a serial killer who murders women and uses a portable camera to film himself doing it, perversely recording their expressions of terror. He's compiling all of this footage into a snuff film for himself to get off to later. Yeah, the man is a murderer and a voyeur, hence the name of the film. The movie starts off with our main character, Mark, picking up an escort while secretly filming her. He then follows her into her place and murders her. Later, like the perverse paraphiliac that he is, he watches the footage. The next morning, the police remove the prostitute's corpse from her home, and he poses as a reporter just to film her dead body being moved. Later during the film, we find out that Mark's father used him as a guinea pig for his studies on fear in children, subjecting him to multiple types of stimuli. The experiments of Mark's father range from things such as large lizards being put on his bed to even recording Mark's reactions during his mother's deathbed. The movie contains obvious themes of violence, exploitation, and murder. Ichi the Killer. Ichi the Killer is a body horror film directed by Takashi Miike. The movie begins with our main guy named Ichi who's having a good time on a balcony and spying as he watches some pimp assault an escort. Great start. Anyway, sometime after a Yakuza boss is killed, one of his subordinates is searching for him, and Ichi is framed for his murder. The movie is full of violence and gets disturbing with some scenes. The Yakuza eventually realize they might have been misled, and whoever tipped them off was the one behind it. Gigi is a sadistic mastermind who uses Ichi and his fighting skills to eliminate rival gang members. Meanwhile, another depraved character named Kakihara grows obsessed with finding someone who can hurt him, so he becomes fixated on Ichi. Ichi is kind of psychotic and a repressed pervert. He becomes homicidal and sexually excited when angry, and I don't have much to comment on the gory details. The movie is really interesting, and I'd recommend watching it. Just beware of the bloody gore, murder, assault, and violence. Slaughtered Vomit Dolls. Slaughtered Vomit Dolls is a psychological horror film directed by Sean Federchuk. The film opens with a video of young Angela talking about the first time she was on TV. It cuts to present-day Angela where the cameraman asks if she will do anything for him, to which she agrees. Various clips of Angela being harmed are intercut with videos of her younger self shown. The film then cuts to Angela listing prices for various adult acts. An adult video is shown before cutting back to young Angela with horses, and the movie continues, getting more disturbing. Another woman named Pig cries and screams while getting hurt in a disturbing way. She's then stabbed. More clips are shown of Angela sleeping. Now, there is a whole lot more. There is no limit to the obscenity of this movie, so quick heads up that it contains some really awful content, such as gore, sexual violence, mutilation, all of that. Tumbling Doll of Flesh. Tumbling Doll of Flesh is a pornographic horror film directed by Tamakichi Anaru. The film starts with Kana and Kiku, who are hired to star in an amateur adult movie. As the shoot progresses, it incorporates rough elements which make Kana very uncomfortable. Kana tries to leave, but the cameraman and Kiku knock her out and then tie her to a bed. Things get really vile and grotesque from here on. Essay, mutilation, and a lot of disturbing and vile scenes. I think this much information is enough to illustrate how vile this film is. And trust me, there is much more which will genuinely make your guts churn. The Poughkeepsie Tapes. The Poughkeepsie Tapes is a pseudo-documentary horror film directed by John Eric Dowdle. The film is presented as a documentary, showing us interviews of police and FBI officials. Police officers raid the house of a serial killer where they find over 800 videotapes of murders, ranging from the abduction of victims to the post-mortem mutilation. Despite the volume of evidence, the serial killer, aka Edward, is careful not to be shown on any of the tapes unless he's fully disguised. This opens an investigation on both him and his victims. Now beware that this movie is really gut-twisting. The first tape out of the 800 shows Edward abducting and doing really disturbing things to people, which includes SA. Somehow it only gets more disgusting. Don't watch this if vile films involving children upset you. Cannibal Apocalypse. Cannibal Apocalypse is a horror film directed by Antonio Margaretti. The film opens with a flashback of the Vietnam War, a time of true happiness for our main character, Norman Hopper, where he was bitten and infected with a virus that leaves people craving for human flesh. Our main character wakes up from his nightmare, and one of his buddies hits him up for a drink. After his drink, he gets seduced by a girl, but bites her and spreads his virus. Then his friend literally tells him to surrender to the police, but our guy's like, no, and munches on the police. Considering that this is a cannibal and zombie movie, yeah, we get to see the cannibalism, violence, and chaos our dear main character contributed to. Considering our previous movie, this is one of the less disturbing movies, but don't get spooked by the scene with a hand in the freezer. Cabin Fever. Cabin Fever is a comedy horror film directed by Eli Roth. Congratulations to him. This is the third time we talk about a movie directed by him. Moving on to the story, Henry, a dude walking in the woods, finds a dog which died from a blood infection, and since he came in contact with the blood, he gets infected too. A group of college students on break, Jeff, Marcy, Paul, Karen, are on a vacation in a nearby cabin for their October break. Bert leaves and goes to hunt squirrels, but accidentally shoots the now badly infected and disfigured Henry. Despite Henry's pleas for help, Bert runs away afraid and doesn't say anything about the incident. Later, Henry once again makes an appearance where he's begging for help, but Bert shuts the door on him, so he tries to steal the group's car while vomiting, since he's clearly totally okay. And to add more suffering, good fortune for Henry, when he approaches Marcy and Karen, Paul not so accidentally sets him on fire. As for the rest of the movie, let's just say the infection spreads horribly. Marcy gets mauled and eaten. Jeff gets to see the remains of his friends too, which totally won't scar him. Thank you once again to Eli for making me feel very impressed by how disturbing he always manages to make it. Death to Kafar. Death to Kafar is another illegal shockumentary. It's basically a mixtape compilation from the 2000s of Islamic extremists ending people's lives in brutal ways. And it's a full-on compilation which lasts for 17 minutes, making it the shortest shockumentary so far, and still so vile it's on this list. Why does this count as a film on sketchy websites? I have no idea, so don't ask me. Who the hell put all of that content together to make it a short movie? Hell if I know, once again. I did some digging but couldn't find the original source. Once again, yes, this is illegal, so don't even think about watching it. The Life and Death of a Porno Gang. The Life and Death of a Porno Gang is a horror and exploitation film, directed by Mladen Djordjevic. The film is about an unsuccessful director, Marco, who starts filming together with another adult movie director named Kane. Through these films, Marco manages to befriend all of the people a normal person shouldn't. Marco eventually has a falling out with Kane, so he starts his own adult club, so to say. Then this takes a pretty bad hit and gets destroyed thanks to Kane's brother, who drags Marco and his film's premiere through the mud. And in a very weird twist of events, Marco ends up with a German guy who suggests making snuff films. So yeah, German dude has the most normal idea to make films with the authentic scenes of violence, with the volunteers, aka unknowing victims, who maybe did not care for their lives too much. Tusk. Tusk is a body horror film directed by Kevin Smith. The movie is about a man who gets turned into a walrus. Yeah, a walrus. In the film, our main character, aka Wallace, travels to another country to interview a guy who accidentally mutilated himself and went viral for it. Wallace finds out the kid doesn't exist anymore, so then he begins searching for somebody else who he can use for his own profits. He interviews eccentric people and ends up with an insane guy named Howard, who tells him the story of Mr. Tusk, who was a walrus he knew. Not long after, Wallace wakes up to find himself strapped into a wheelchair and his left leg missing. Howard then reveals that he can still walk and lays out his plans to fit Wallace into a perfectly constructed walrus costume in an attempt to recreate Mr. Tusk, which is totally normal and sane behavior. After some rather disturbing imagery on screen, it continues with even more, and Wallace has his right leg missing and his tongue too. By the end of the film, we see Wallace, a walrus, living in a wildlife rescue. Shogun's Joy of Torture. Shogun's Joy of Torture is an Erogudo film directed by Teruo Ishii. The film is about the Edo period Japan, and a judge named Yoshioka reflects on cases in which torture was used. We are then told about 3 of those cases. I'm going to very briefly tell you what happens in the first case, and leave you wondering about the other 2. The first case is about a girl named Mitsu, and her brother Shinzo is injured during an accident, and a kimono shop owner pays his medical fees. Because of this, Mitsu is indebted to Minosuke, the shop owner, and then gets essayed by him. Shinzo finds out what happened and decides to kill Minosuke for what he did to his sister, but Mitsu manages to stop him. The two then confess their feelings to each other and have a sweet home Alabama moment. Minosuke finds out about them and uses it as blackmail. This results in him doing things which I can't talk about on YouTube, and probably you don't want to know either. The first story ends with Mitsu getting crucified upside down. The other 2? Well, I wouldn't recommend finding out on your own. Vulgar. Vulgar is a horror and exploitation film directed by Brian Johnson. It's about a man who performs as a clown at a child's birthday party and tries to piece his life back together after he was essayed. Struggling to make ends meet, our main character, Will, comes up with the idea to become a bachelor party clown, his idea being that men can hire him as a stripper for their parties. Will gets booked, and when arriving at the party, Will is attacked by a man and his 2 sons who beat and essay him. The whole attack is videotaped, and the men take their turns abusing and assaulting him viciously. Sadly, Will's suffering doesn't end here. He's held hostage by the 3, forced into more humiliating acts, and drugged. The movie is violent and contains explicit scenes of SA, obviously. The Necrophiles. The Necrophiles is a movie about a zombie predator who returns from the dead to assault and cannibalize the living. And by predator, we don't mean the Yautja hunters from space who fight xenomorphs, which probably would make a cool movie. Anyway, how the hell does someone come up with that? Well, I don't know, but you could ask the director Matt Geisel. The film was followed by 2 sequels, which I genuinely do not understand how, but I guess it gained attention, with its content literally being about a zombie sex maniac. I don't think you need me to elaborate on this film too much. I mean, I just spoiled what it's about for you. You can mentally picture the rest for yourself, or you can go ahead and watch a zombie madman rise from the grave to cannibalize and essay others. Porn of the Dead. Porn of the Dead is a film directed by Rob Rotten. There isn't really any structure to the plot. It's primarily pornographic horror, and the so-called plot itself is just 5 unconnected sequences? I guess we could call them that, and they just show us zombies doing it. Oh, and the world around them looks like it's in the state of a zombie apocalypse. Let's just say that in one sequence, we're shown a man who finds a dazed and emaciated woman stumbling down the road, so he goes ahead and kidnaps her, forcing her right into his car. He takes her to his house and strangles her in some garbage plastic-filled pit, and the man and the zombie woman he kidnapped share a moment, after which it gets more vile and weird, trust me. Erotic Nights of the Living Dead. Yet another pornographic horror movie to mention which involves zombies. Erotic Nights of the Living Dead is another horror and erotic film involving zombies, which is written and directed by Joe D'Amato. This movie, I don't really have much to say. The plot is something. Basically what happens is our main characters inspect an island for a resort development. They get warned that bad things are going to happen by some shady voodoo couple, and then zombies show up and start cannibalizing. Somehow the movie manages to fit in our main characters doing it in all of this, which is quite some dedication, I guess. I mean, in a nutshell, your days are counted, so you might as well enjoy them. Snuff 102. Snuff 102 is an exploitation and horror film directed by Mariano Peralta. The film is about a journalist who looks into snuff, and boy is it an uncomfortable one to watch. The film uses a mix of staged violence combined with real footage of animal cruelty. The film relies on its gruesome imagery and shock value rather than dialogue. Animal experimentation footage is shown, followed by dismemberment. It's implied that the man gets off to it, and it gets far more graphic. The film is heavy, literally like a mixture of fiction and real content, which makes you question what scene is real and what is made up. Needless to say, the footage the journalist finds is truly vile, and things only get worse for her. If you can't handle animal cruelty, I suggest you don't watch this movie, because animals are essentially one of its main shock factors. Snuff R73. Just a quick heads up that this next film is an illegal shockumentary just like all of the others. Do not seek out this content, it's akin to Death to Kafar. Snuff R73 is a film that's really only found on horror forums and sketchy gore websites because it's a collection of real-life footage. I don't want to dive too deeply into this, but it features young people, like genuine raw war footage. I cannot empathize that hard enough. It's absolutely vile and disgusting, and it's really hard to stomach. It also has real footage of many medical procedures. It's unknown who created this, and I could not find a straight answer. I did some digging online, but everything surrounding this is pretty messy, and I'm unable to confirm who's telling the truth. Some people online claim that this film was made by a group named R73, who also made the multiple shock mixtapes, but I obviously can't confirm that. I also read how people claim that they can only find the short version of this movie. Meanwhile, there are other parts for it, allegedly. Once again, take this information with a grain of salt. I'm only telling you what I found online, and if you know more, then drop a comment about it. Eraserhead. Eraserhead is a body horror film directed by David Lynch. The film is weird, if I dare criticize it. I mean, the main guy, Henry Spencer's face, is superimposed over a planet in space. Then he opens his mouth, and a spermatozoon creature emerges from it. So what the hell? Moving things along, our dude Henry is seeing things and having visions. He sees the man from the odd planet in space, and there's also a lady who inhabits his radiator, and he stomps more of the sperm creatures. Oh, and then he has sex with some girl down the hall. He has another vision in which the lady in the radiator sings a song, and then his head pops off. While he's totally sane, his head is replaced by a baby's crying head. Henry's head falls from the sky. A boy then finds it and takes it to a pencil factory to turn it into erasers. If it wasn't for how weird this film was, it wouldn't be on this list. Keep in mind that it contains body horror. Elephant. Just like Zero Day, Elephant is a film including two very disturbed teenagers who plan a mass murder, including a school bombing. Directed by Gus Van Sant, we follow the story of an ordinary day at school, shown to us through multiple students' perspectives. Eventually, we see Alex and Eric, the perpetrators, preparing to carry all of this out. Their motives are vague, but there's several scenes showing them being bullied and exposed to violent media. There are flashbacks throughout the film which show them preparing for the attack by ordering weapons online and creating a plan. The two plan to detonate bombs in the cafeteria during lunch and shoot all the people who try to escape. Alex and Eric kill their fellow classmates coldly and basically get rid of anyone who tries to stop them. At the end of the film, Alex cold-bloodedly kills Eric and then finds two more students who he begins taunting. The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. The Strange Thing About the Johnsons is a short psychological horror film directed by Ari Aster. Our film starts out with a poet named Sidney, who accidentally interrupts his preteen son, Isaiah, while he was having a private moment. Sidney apologizes and reassures his son that it's natural, and he's unaware that his son, Isaiah, was looking at a picture of him from the past. Yikes, what a start. Anyway, some years later, Joanne, Sidney's wife and Isaiah's mother, finds out Isaiah is secretly with his father. Despite being disturbed, Joanne takes a shower, and that night, Sidney leaves a typed memoir under her pillow. The memoir details Sidney's disturbing experiences in it. During a scene where Sidney is listening to a self-help tape in the bath, Isaiah breaks the door down and essays him. Joanne literally hears her husband's screams but ignores them. And for a short film, this really manages to disturb you by how quickly everything happens and how disgusting it is. At the end, after Sidney passes, his son tries to kill his mom, and things get ugly again. Excision. Our main character, Pauline, is a disturbed and delusional student who thinks that if she makes do with her aspirations for a medical career, she'll have solutions to her mommy issues. Pauline has a younger sister named Grace who has cystic fibrosis, and Pauline and her mother have a strained relationship. Totally sane and not troubled, Pauline has delusions of being a great surgeon, and she has some horrific dreams that she finds stimulating, which are really just grotesque and fucked up. Pauline wants to get rid of her V card, and she manages to set herself up with a guy, and because she has a fascination with blood and weird stuff, she sets it up during her Shark Week. After this, Pauline gets more unhinged and kills many people in disturbing ways, including her sister. So, if you like to see insane and completely unhinged characters doing crazy things, then this might be the movie for you. Vacancy. Vacancy is a horror film directed by Nimrod Antal. It's about a couple who get stranded at a motel because of their car breaking down, and then getting stalked by insane killers for their snuff films. At some point, our main characters, David and Amy, are just chilling in their room, and David watches a videotape that has been left in the room. At first, it looks like a horror film, but then Amy and him realize it is a fetishistic film, aka snuff, that was made in the same room as theirs, possibly their exact room. Now freaked out, David searches the room and finds multiple security cameras hidden in it, and realizes that some dude who was named Mason is watching them. David and Amy flee the room for the woods, but are confronted by two men wearing masks. The same two men who assaulted guests on the snuff tapes and then murdered them. Despite the horrors which they go through, Amy and David manage to survive at the end. But that's only after a big struggle and David almost dying. Nightmare. Nightmare is a slasher film written and directed by Romano Scavallini. In a nutshell, it's about a mentally unwell patient who goes on a killing spree after escaping from an institution. Anyway, being the unwell man that he is, he goes on a trip to Florida, which is already insane by itself, with the intent of murdering his ex-wife and kid. Yeah, he's bonkers and deranged. His name's George, by the way, and he was placed in a psychiatric institution after murdering and mutilating a family. He's diagnosed with many disorders, and the man is a danger to everyone around him. Also, George's dad was murdered, and he keeps being haunted by flashbacks of that. George goes after his ex, and by the end of the movie, we find out that, once upon a time during his childhood, George caught his father engaging in a disturbing activity with another woman, and during that, he murdered them both with an axe. I think this gives you the gist of how troubled he is, and what to expect from the movie. Borderland. Borderland is a horror film directed by Zev Berman. A piece of lore, it is loosely based on the true story of Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, who was a drug lord and a leader of a religious cult that practiced human sacrifice. With that in mind, we are surely set for a ride. The film starts off with two police officers who find magical sigils and gruesome remains of animals, together with human sacrifice, inside of a seemingly abandoned house. The two police officers get ambushed by the occupants who are committing their Satanism here, and one of the cops is forced to watch them harm his partner's eyes, and watch how they decapitate him. He's then shot but allowed to live because they tell him to warn others to stay out of their way. So there is a lot going on in this movie. Like, this was literally the beginning. Just you wait until we dive into the plot. Ed, Henry, and Phil are three young guys who decide to head down to Mexico for the week and hit up the strip clubs, since they're a bit dumb and they think a lack of law enforcement in the area is good. I bet you could never guess what happens next. Yeah, shit hits the fan for them. Phil gets abducted, Henry and Ed notice that the authorities are terrified of whoever kidnapped their friend, and the movie gets very gruesome. I mean, it is an occult film with human sacrifice, which means violence and murder. Be My Cat, a film for Anne. Be My Cat, a film for Anne is a found-footage style of horror film directed by Adrian Sofé. The main character is a movie maker who has an obsession with the famous actress Anne Hathaway and tries to convince her to come to Romania to star in his upcoming film. He goes to extremes, using 3 local actresses to shoot demo scenes for him to send to Anne as proof of his amazing acting and filmmaking. The first actress that he uses as an example of his filmmaking style is a girl named Sonia. Adrian, our insane main character, begins shooting the scene with her, and it quickly becomes clear that Be My Cat is about a stalker obsessed with an actress. Adrian starts tweaking, and the lines between acting and not acting become blurred, which scares Sonia, so she calls the police. Adrian does his best to convince her it's a misunderstanding, and it's all acting. Then he convinces her to shoot another scene at night. In the night scene, the stalker is supposed to use chloroform to abduct the actress, but guess what? Adrian uses real chloroform to knock Sonia out. Continuing his degeneracy, Adrian undresses Sonia and tells the camera, aka Annie, that he would never do that in real life while he changes Sonia into a cat suit. Unfortunately, after Sonia wakes up terrified, Adrian kills Sonia and hides her body in the basement. With this much in mind, you know how disturbing this movie already is. I'm not going to spoil what happens to the other 2 actresses so that you can watch the movie yourself. Hunger. Hunger is a horror movie directed by Stephen Henches, where 5 strangers are imprisoned in an underground dungeon, Jordan, Grant, Luke, Anna, and Alex all wake up in complete darkness surrounded by stone walls, and they realize they have been abducted. The well which they are trapped in contains an in-ground toilet, toilet paper, and 4 barrels of water, yet absolutely no food. Trapped together for days, Luke is aggressive and frequently tries to have beef with Grant. While they're all trapped, an unidentified man watches them and keeps track of the group's behaviors through hidden cameras. Magically, a scalpel ends up appearing at the bottom of one of the water barrels. We eventually find out that whoever the sick man that imprisoned them is had a traumatic accident during his childhood. Apparently, he was in a car crash with his mother, which left him trapped inside of the car, and the only way for him to survive was by eating her, and then finally being discovered and helped 2 weeks later. Okay, sure, but why is he doing this to others? Maybe he's just crazy. Back to our group, Luke, Anna, and Alex make plans to kill Grant, who is dying faster due to a pre-existing condition which he has. They steal the scalpel from Jordan and then kill Grant and eat him. Afterwards, they consider Jordan to be their next meal. Alex eventually loses grip on reality and tries to bite Anna, but Luke stabs Alex, and Alex obviously turns into dinner. The movie gets progressively worse since the characters are put through hell, which makes them commit more horrifying acts. Dread. Dread is a horror movie directed by Anthony DeBlasi. The plot begins with Stephen Grace. He's a psychology major and meets another student named Quaid, who reveals his plan to conduct a fear study as a school project. He wants to record people as they talk about their fears, and Stephen doesn't know that Quaid is kind of mentally unstable. Quaid had seen his parents killed by an axe murderer as a child, and that apparently is his fear, so he wants to see other people's fears. The guys begin to interview people, and Quaid is unsatisfied with the results. Their friend Cheryl, who also happens to be their editor, offers herself up for the project, and she reveals that she was essayed by her father. Cheryl's father also worked at a meatpacking plant and smelled of meat, so to this day she can't stand the smell of meat and doesn't eat any. Finding out that she has quite some trauma, Quaid gets thrilled. Quaid keeps interviewing people and becomes more and more unhinged. He starts using what he knows about people's fears against them. With all of that information he has gathered, he begins to torment others. With this in mind, you can imagine how the movie turns out. There's violence, murder, and heck, at the end, Quaid throws the now dead Steven at Cheryl, who's being held hostage. And he tells her, let's see how hungry you have to be to get through that, before leaving her with Steven's body. Demons. Demons is a horror film directed by Lamberto Bava. The film is about two students who are given complimentary tickets to a free movie screening, which quickly goes south. After they're at the theater, they soon find themselves trapped in the theater with a horde of demons. Yep, people run around them, get infected, and then try to kill them. One of the guests who was also watching the movie scratches her cheek, so she goes to the bathroom, and there she transforms into some bloodthirsty monster that's similar to the ones in the creepy film they were watching. Now that she's no longer human, she begins attacking and transforming people. Because what monster would you be if you didn't torment humans? The movie gets a bit graphic, killings, demons, and people trying to escape. So obviously that's to be expected, just some gore and paranormal things. Not too disturbing, so you can enjoy this film without throwing up. I think it's a good starter movie if you're getting into horror and more disturbing movies. Adam Chaplin. Adam Chaplin is a horror film, which gets bloody as hell. Oh, and it has two directors, Emmanuel De Santi and Giulio De Santi. Adam, the main character, investigates the murder of his wife after she dies, and his life is torn apart. He discovers that a mafia boss named Denny is involved in the murder. Because of the mafia's involvement, Adam can't trust the corrupt police to help. Adam summons a demon who offers him superhuman strength, dark powers, and promises to lead him to the murderer. But the catch is that he'll only do that if he does everything the demon asks for. So, with a demon involved, things get bloody, just like I mentioned earlier. The movie delivers some extreme gore, like people on fire, for example. Necromantic 2. Remember Necromantic? It has a sequel. So guess what? I'm gonna tell you about it. So apparently, Necromantic 2 is set right after Robert died. Remember the scene where a woman was digging up his grave? Yep, this is where we pick up again. So, this lady, Monica, is digging up Robert's grave and stealing his corpse from the church's graveyard. And she 100% won't be seeing any white pearly gates after this. Monica evades getting noticed while carrying Rob's corpse into her apartment. She then unwraps him from his body bag, and images of tabloid headlines inform viewers of the source of Monica's knowledge of Rob and his activities. Yeah. Later on, another character named Mark heads to his unspecified job, and the film then cuts back to a scene of Monica and Rob. It is now revealed that our guy Mark's job is dubbing adult films. So in the next scene, you can guess what Monica does with Rob's corpse. Anyway, the film is just like the first one. Tons and tons of necrophilia. The Butcher. The Butcher is a horror film directed by Kim Jin-won. The film shows us the making of a snuff film, from both the perspective of a killer and a victim. There honestly isn't much depth to the characters or anything. It's obviously heavy on the shock factor, graphic violence, and the whole element of snuff itself. I think it gets pretty gross, which isn't surprising considering the violence, blood, and torture. I don't have much to tell you about this. It's just pure brutality. I haven't seen any people talk about this one yet though, so I figured I'd mention it. Subconscious Cruelty. Subconscious Cruelty is an anthology horror film directed by Karim Hussein. The film has 4 disturbing segments, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about 2 of them. In one segment, the film literally begins with a short sequence of a man dissecting a woman. Yeah, what a start. In the other segment, we're shown a man who narrates his obsession with his own sister. Oh, and his sister is pregnant by her husband. This creeper is spying on his sister and her husband during a private moment. So, her brother is psychotic. During the time his sister is giving birth, he helps her deliver her child. And there is no way I'm allowed to tell you what happens next, but trust me, it is disgusting. Sick Girl. Sick Girl is a horror film directed by Eben McGar. The story follows Izzy, who's a troubled teenage girl. She decides to attack and kill her brother's bullies. Izzy has an older brother who she obviously idolizes and is smitten with. His name is Rusty, and he's a saint in her eyes. She overlooks all the signs that he is anything but perfect, and she has an unhealthy obsession with him. After causing a massacre on the school bus, Izzy manages to trap and imprison a couple of the bullies in the trunk of her car. She then manages to kidnap 3 more and shows no compassion. The deaths on the school bus are reported on the news, and they're conveniently blamed on the 3 others who Izzy kidnapped. Izzy then has a flashback of Rusty's girlfriend kissing him goodbye before he leaves to join the Marines. Being the insane teenager that she is, plus considering she's already on a murder spree, she goes to kill Rusty's girlfriend. Izzy then goes back to brutalizing the bully she still has captive, but she gets caught. You get the gist of the movie: insane teenager murdering and tormenting others. Thanatomorphos. Thanatomorphos is a body horror film directed by Eric Falardo. The film is about a girl named Laura who's introverted and has depression. She's also a nurse. She lives alone in a small apartment due to the fact that she used to have an abusive ex, but she still hooks up with him occasionally. Laura is distracted by a patient clay carving and touching himself, after which a red spot appears on her groin. When she takes a shower, one of her fingernails falls off and a new purple stain appears on her back. Laura goes to a party, and after the party, Antoine, Laura's ex, forces her. Laura gets ill during the night, and after that, Laura wakes up naked without Antoine there. Probably because she threw up on him during the night, which he deserved. Laura then goes to drink some water from the sink, but doesn't notice that the drain is full of her blood. Laura gets hurt again, but she goes home eventually. The film gets progressively worse as Laura begins losing it, and then she ends up murdering her ex, Antoine. Her body is also rotting and has maggots in it, and her apartment has traces of black blood and flesh scattered around. Laura also tries to get someone named Julian to have sex with her again, but he obviously refuses when he sees how decomposed she is, so she murders him. Carver. Carver is a horror film directed by Franklin Guerrero Jr. The film is about a group of campers. They take a detour and stop at a bar, where the owner asks them for help. The campers help him by getting supplies from the storehouse in the woods, but they also discover snuff films, which they don't know are real. They soon become the new targets of 2 homicidal guys who are out for their blood. The movie has a lot of graphic and disturbing scenes, so beware. Tokyo Gore Police. Tokyo Gore Police is a sci-fi horror film directed by Yoshihiro Nishimura. In a dystopian Japan, a scientist known as Keyman creates a virus that mutates humans into monstrous creatures called engineers. And to kill these engineers, we have a squad called Engineer Hunters. The Hunters use violence, sadism, and street-side executions to maintain law and order in the world. One of the hunters, named Ruka, receives a new case that leads to the Keyman himself. Unfortunately, he infects her by inserting a key-shaped tumor into her forearm. In a strip club, a police chief also gets infected, and he begins causing deaths. Ruka actually has a civil conversation with the mad scientist, where she learns a little about him. Then, on her way out, she witnesses the police force brutalizing civilians accused of being engineers. Ruka then meets up with her friend, but her arm mutates into an alien-like head with razor-sharp claws. She's infected, and so she beheads the officers. The film is actually pretty good. It's just gory and bizarre. No reason. No reason is quite literally no reason to watch for the plot, just for the gore. The film was directed by Olaf Ittenbach. The movie makes no sense to me. It just has a bunch of things going on which I literally do not even care about, so the focus is gore. Moving things along, Jennifer, our main character's soul, leaves her body, and she has visions of her unfulfilled life bombarding her mind while she lies naked on the floor soaking in blood. I don't know what the hell is going on either. She fell asleep in a bathtub and then she woke up on the floor covered in blood and guts. There's also some masked man who promises to lead her to the right path, towards the sacred white light. Shram. Shram is an exploitation horror film directed by Jörg Bucharest. Our movie is about a psychotic killer, aka Lothar Schramm, who's a cab driver. Sometimes he invites callers in for a cognac, such as a couple who came to his door looking to tell him about Jesus, not knowing that he's about to make them see Jesus. After he invites them over, he might murder them, and maybe assemble their bodies in suggestive positions. Schramm is lonely. His sex life is seriously deranged, he's insane, and he's smitten with his neighbor who's an escort. So, in a nutshell, since his neighbor is an escort and he's a cab driver, she asks him to drive her to a villa for one of her clients, and he agrees. Afterwards, he invites her to dinner, and later, he takes her back to his flat. He drugs her and does really deranged things to her. I'll keep it at that. And that's the gist of this film. Rape zombies. Lust of the Dead. Oh my god. Don't ask me why this is a thing with multiple movies. I don't know. All I myself can do is ask why as I read the title. This is supposed to be horror comedy? I don't know. I don't find anything with SA funny. In this movie, the entire female population across the whole planet are attacked by infected males who have become sex-crazed zombies, and they're hungry for human flesh. With no choices left for them to survive, a group of women assemble and decides to take a stand against the zombies. They arm themselves with assault rifles and explosives to fight off hordes of horny zombies. The movie is weird, but at the same time very unserious. It contains a lot of essay, violence, and it's dark despite how ridiculous it gets. Snowtown. Snowtown is a crime film directed by Justin Kurzel. 16-year-old James, aka Jamie, lives with his mother Elizabeth and his brothers, including his half-brother Troy, with whom he has a disturbing relationship with. What a grim start. One day, Elizabeth, the mother of the boy's boyfriend, takes inappropriate pictures of the boys. The police are reluctant to intervene in this, but thankfully, Elizabeth has a friend who introduces her to a guy that hates pedophiles, also known as John. John hates them, so he manages to harass the pedo boyfriend away. John also sort of steps up as a father figure for Jamie, which is good. Anyway, John has a wall of pedophiles in his room. He keeps their details, names, addresses, everything, and Jamie finds himself drawn to how violent John is. On one occasion, John becomes aware that Jamie is being essayed by Troy. Instead of just helping him, he wants Jamie to stand up for himself, gives him a gun, and has Jamie shoot his dog. Yeah, John isn't any good either. The story is pretty weird because John exposes Jamie to murder and dead bodies and basically desensitizes and manipulates the poor kid. So this movie has violence, murder, essay. I Saw the Devil. I Saw the Devil is an action thriller film directed by Kim Ji-woon. The film is bloody. Jang Kyun-chul is a school bus driver. He encounters a woman named Jang Joo-yoon who has a flat tire, so he offers to fix it for her. Instead of just fixing the tire, he beats her unconscious, abducts her, and he brings her to his house. He dismembers her and doesn't notice her ring falling into his floor drain. Kyung-chul then scatters the body parts around. He throws some into a local stream, which is how the murder is discovered. The police then conduct a search led by Jang, Joo-yeon's father, and Joo-yeon's fiancée, Kim Soo-hyun. The two make vows to exact revenge on whoever took her life and brutally dismembered her. The investigation leads to 4 suspects, and after searching the home of Kyung-chul, who's the killer, and the 3rd suspect, Soo-hyun finds Joo-young's ring. Sometime later, Kyung-chul brings a young girl home and tries to essay her, but Soo-hyun interrupts and knocks him unconscious. Instead of killing Kyung-chul though, Soo-hyun forces him to swallow a GPS so that he can track Kyung-chul and listen to his conversations. Yeah, I don't know why he wouldn't arrest him here either. Anyway, yeah, it gets worse. Kyung-chul wakes up, he kills more people, he essays more, and the whole thing is really dark. Kyung-chul does get killed at the end though, but this movie is an intense one. Terrifier. Terrifier is a slasher film directed by Damien Leone. The film scared me, that's for sure. Tara and Dawn are 2 girls who leave a party and encounter a clown named Art. Art follows them to a pizzeria but gets kicked out by the restaurant's owner for smearing his feces over the bathroom walls. Anyway, when Tara and Dawn go back to the car, the tires have been mysteriously slashed, and during this time, Art returns to the pizzeria to kill the owner. Moving on further down the plot, Art is a psychotic killer, and Tara wakes up bound to a chair. She's then forced to see Dawn suspended upside down, and Art forces her to watch as he saws Dawn. Tara eventually escapes, but Art shoots her, and then he attacks some more characters like a guy named Mike. The film only gets more gruesome from here on, and I'm not kidding, it gets worse. A ton of bloody gore. By the way, Art is a supernatural being, and he can reanimate. Terrifier 2. If you think it ends with only one Terrifier film, a film about a supernatural murderer clown that haunts my dreams, then you're wrong. Because there's 3. In the second part, while he's being examined, Art the Clown resurrects and murders the person examining him. Then he goes to a laundromat to clean his blood-soaked suit, because an evil demonic clown needs to look preppy and clean before chasing me in my dreams again. Anyway, this film, much like the previous one, is full of murder, violence, brutality, the whole imagery. To put it into perspective for you, in one scene, Art goes to his next unlucky victim, Allie's home, trick-or-treating. Allie ridicules him because she thinks he's too old for trick-or-treating, and Art takes full offense. Art then breaks into Allie's home and brutally maims her, keeping her alive for long enough to traumatize her mother, who he also has a grudge against since she gave birth to Allie, so he also kills her. Giallo a Venezia. Giallo a Venezia, or Giallo in Venice, is a psychological horror film directed by Mario Landi. An inspector, or, well, detective, is assigned a case with a killer who committed a double murder, killing a couple. The film is interesting? For my lack of a better word, anyway. It contains a lot of sex, drugs, gore, and things like that. More murders unfold, and during the investigation, the detective finds out the husband was a drug addict and sex maniac. Also, I want to mention that the full movie was over 90 minutes long, so if you stumble across a 40-minute one, it's probably the heavily censored one where nothing extreme happens, just a guy being set on fire. All of the violence is in the uncut version of the movie. Aside from that, I've seen some people call it a nasty slasher movie, but for me, it's not too deep, considering some of the other films on this list. Still, a good movie for some people though. Guinea Pig, Devil's Experiment. Guinea Pig is a horror exploitation series. I believe there are a total of 6 films for it out there, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about this one, which was directed by Satoru Ogura. The film depicts 3 men who harm a woman in multiple ways. They beat her and do everything horrific. It's graphic, on screen, and it might make your guts churn. The film was also presented in a found footage style, and on-screen text claims that the film features real footage of torture. Big yikes, thanks, I'm officially disturbed. But don't worry, none of the scenes are real, thankfully. They're just really vile and created a stir since the found footage style really makes you feel like you're watching a snuff film. So, yeah, if this interests you, then go ahead and watch it. Guinea Pig, A Flower of Flesh and Blood. The second Guinea Pig film. This one gained so much attention for the realistic decapitation of a woman. People were worried it's real, and authorities wanted proof that it was special effects and that no one was harmed. So enjoy that piece of lore. The film is about a woman who's walking home late at night. Unfortunately, she's attacked and kidnapped by someone unknown. The man is masked and knocks her out with chloroform. The poor victim eventually wakes up and realizes she's in a bed inside of some type of blood-covered dungeon. She's tied down next to a collection of household tools and other instruments, and she painfully and slowly gets dismembered. It's very graphic. Guinea Pig, He Never Dies. He Never Dies is the third Guinea Pig film. In a nutshell, it's about a depressed man who gets dumped by his girlfriend, so he tries to end it, but that doesn't work. So he decides to scare the dude who stole his girlfriend away by throwing his own guts at him. What do I mean by that? Well, the main character finds out that he doesn't feel pain after experimenting a bit, so he comes up with some scary revenge plans. This film is quite light-hearted compared to the previous 2, but it's still very gory nonetheless. Guinea Pig, Mermaid in the Manhole. Guinea Pig's Mermaid in the Manhole continues the train of disturbing screenplay and nasty gore. Mermaid in the Manhole is about an artist who recently lost his wife but finds and rescues a mermaid. The mermaid, however, develops some awfully painful sores all over her body, but the weird artist literally paints with whatever is oozing out of her sores. Since the mermaid has a disease which keeps getting more painful for her and much worse, he can no longer handle dealing with that, so he has a breakdown and brutally dismembers her, killing her. Guinea Pig, Devil Woman Doctor. Skipping Guinea Pig's Android of Notre Dame, since it's not as disturbing as the others, let's talk about Devil Woman Doctor. This film is, once again, more of a splatter comedy combined with gore. It's about a drag queen who conducts experiments on patients, and by experiments, I mean weird, grotesque tortures which leave the drag queen doctor covered in blood. The experiments we're presented with are gross and bizarre to say the least. There's a family whose heads explode when they get angry, and there's also a man whose right half wants to kill the left half. Anyway, you get the gist of how odd this one is. So with that, this is the end of the Guinea Pig film series. I might have accidentally messed the order of the films up, but they're not narratively connected anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes is an iconic horror film directed by Alexander Aja. The film is about a couple and their children who travel through the desert for their anniversary. They take a shortcut after a dude at a gas station tells them about one, but shit hits the fan fairly quickly for them as they end up stranded in the desert. Oh, and they're not alone. There's mutated cannibals there too. How do they find this out? Well, the dog escapes and one of the boys run after her to find her, but rather than finding his poor dog alive, he finds her dead. So yeah, the family is stalked and murdered by these mutants, and the ones who are still left alive are fighting to survive. It's pretty bloody if you ask me. And this film has definitely left its mark on the list of disturbing films, because it's pretty good. I'm not going to spill too much of it, as you can find out what happens in the movie by simply watching it or looking it up online. The Blob. The Blob is another sci-fi horror film which gave me the creeps during some scenes. The film was directed by Chuck Russell. What happens in the film is the following. A meteorite crashes on Earth, and an elderly vagabond discovers a massive slime-like substance that adheres to his hand. With the menacing alien blob that just attached itself to his hand, we can predict that nothing good will happen. And our prediction comes true when the blob starts murdering and consuming everything in its path. Apparently, the blob was a biological warfare experiment created during the Cold War, but it became too dangerous to handle, so for some reason, it was launched into space in a satellite. Which just makes me wonder why. Anyway, while in space, the blob mutated due to the radiation, and so it became giant enough to cause the satellite to crash back on Earth. Hence why the blob is now tormenting humanity and engulfing everything. The weird, creepy-looking blob keeps tormenting and consuming humans, thanks to the dumb scientists. Basket Case. Basket Case is a horror film directed by Frank Henenlotter. The film is about a man who carries a large basket with him. The basket contains his extremely deformed twin who he used to be conjoined with. The two brothers are seeking revenge against the doctors who forcefully separated them. Now this is how we end up with a scene where Dr. Julius Lifflander is frightened by something outside his home. A deformed shadow creature then cuts his phone line and stops his power before killing Lifflander by taking his face off. Our main character's name is Dwayne, and his deformed twin's name is Belial. Belial hates the three doctors who separated him from his brother, and Dwayne hates how cruel people are towards Belial. Continuing the disturbing series of murders, and Belial killing one of the doctors in a disturbing way, Belial also tries to SA Dwayne's girlfriend, and he kills her. Then he manages to attack Dwayne also, so Belial is quite frankly a devil. Brain Damage. Brain Damage is a bloody and gory comedy horror film, also directed by Frank Henenlotter. After suffering from an illness, Brian, our main character, has a powerful hallucination. He discovers that he has become host to an alien or worm-like parasite that promises to give him a life free from worry. The parasite gives him hallucinations by inducing him with a fluid injected from its mouth. While Brian is under the influence of the juice the parasite induces him with, Brian is incoherent and unaware of what's going on. Due to his vulnerability, the parasite takes advantage of this and manages to kill and devour the brains of a night watchman in a junkyard and a woman at a nightclub. The film continues with the parasite who's inhabiting Brian's body, using its host to kill and murder those around him. Brian has no control over it and finds out that he can't really kill it. The Last House on the Left. The Last House on the Left is a horror film, and also a essay and revenge one, directed by Dennis Iliadis. The story follows a group who stays at a vacation house which belongs to the parents of two young girls who they kidnapped and assaulted in brutal ways. When he finished doing it, the girl mustered enough strength to escape the group and make it to the lake so she could try escaping by swimming away. But then the killer shot her as she swam. Thankfully, the parents find the critically wounded girl and connect the dots, realizing that the people who have come to their vacation home are the criminals who brutalized their girls. The parents of the victims then come up with a gruesome plan to take revenge against the criminals who assaulted and violated their poor girls. And it's pretty satisfactory, I'm not gonna lie. And I don't feel bad for how they're tortured. Faces of Death 2. Did you at all feel disturbed by the first Faces of Death film I talked about? Considering this is both fake footage mixed with real-life footage of mortuaries, accidents, and police, I'm beyond disturbed. This is like a Mondo film, a type of shockumentary once again. Faces of Death 2 features things like animal slaughter, executions, all tied together by the narration of Dr. Gross. Some subjects are easier to watch than others, and this second film definitely focuses more on the deaths rather than the shock factors themselves, like in the first one. But I think it's equally as disturbing, no matter what other people say. I have seen divided opinions on this one. Some say it's less extreme than the first film, others say it's more brutal. But at the end of the day though, we can all agree that all of the content in this film is vile and disturbing. The worst of the Faces of Death. The worst of the Faces of Death includes many gut-wrenching highlights from the first two Faces of Death films, along with all of the violence, executions, and animal slaughtering footage in it. I don't have much to comment. This film is really just a compilation of the other films I skipped, so you might as well just watch this one if you want to have nightmares and feel like throwing up. Actually, don't watch it. I feel like hearing me say what this film series contains is already enough. To be quite frank, I actually don't recommend you watch this. I still think this is absolutely vile, and this series is getting milked with how many films there are of it. Traces of Death. Traces of Death, much like The Faces of Death, which it is based off of, has multiple movies. It is a Mondo film, again, and a shockumentary containing both real violence, scenes of death, and fake footage. Unlike The Faces of Death, which mostly included fake deaths and reenactments, Traces of Death consists mostly of actual footage depicting death and injury, and it consists of public domain footage from other films. It was basically narrated by Damon Fox, but it's edited by Dennis DeRoche and distributed by Brain Damage Films, who Damon Fox founded, so I guess this film is his and he's the director. In Traces of Death, some of the included scenes have the murder of Maritza Martin, footage of the Iranian embassy siege in London, and the footage of Pennsylvania Treasurer R. Bud Dwyer, and more. It goes without saying, viewer discretion is advised. Faces of Gore. Combining hardcore gore footage with some unbelievably disrespectful narration, Faces of Gore knows that it will offend a lot of viewers, and that appears to be its intention. The film opens with Dr. Vincent Van Gogh walking through a graveyard while he addresses the camera. We learn that he's an expert in death phenomena and that he's about to show us everything he has learned and observed. From here on, we see a fast-paced montage of police camera footage depicting the aftermaths of road accidents and murders. One disgusting scene offers many close-ups of these accidents. This is basically the gist of what this shockumentary contains. The rest of the series is just as vile and hard to watch. It has been banned in over 30 countries, so I don't recommend you seek out this content. A Day of Violence. A Day of Violence is a crime thriller film directed by Darren Ward. The film follows the story of Mitchell, who's a debt collector, known for gathering his cash with some rather violent ways, to say the least. During some torturous debt collecting, Mitchell finds out about a large sum hidden somewhere from a druggie who he's collecting money from. With this in mind, Mitchell decides he doesn't need the drug-addicted man anymore and kills him before getting the cash. With all the money which he now stole from the druggie, who probably stole it from someone else, Mitchell's employer tasks him with taking back this money from the same addict whose money Mitchell already took. What an ironic moment. If you want to see any of the gore, violence, guns, and bullets, I'm quite sure you have to buy the uncut disc of the film. I've only managed to find the censored version online, and that one lacks a lot of the gore compared to the original. In the original, the gore is prominent from the get-go. Traces of Gore. There is a never-ending amount of Mondo films and shockumentaries which have been created. Traces of Gore is the nth shockumentary on this list. Traces of Gore is full of real-life accounts by real-life insane and sick individuals. Put together by directors Nikolai Yarapok and Alex Wesley, Traces of Gore is about an hour long and came out during 2016. Oh, and of course, there's more than just one film. I don't have anything to say about this. It just follows the theme of shockumentary and borderline illegal content, so viewer discretion is advised, although I don't recommend you seek it out. Banned from television. Just like the title suggests, the film is banned from television due to its extreme and disturbing grotesque content, which is highly inappropriate for an audience. Some sources say this vile shockumentary was put together by Joe Franix, who also made more of these types of films. The footage contains real-life accidents, shootings, animal attacks, animal violence, and warfare. And as a side note, I'm honestly surprised at the sheer amount of how many shockumentaries are really out there. I wasn't expecting there to be so many, so this really has opened my eyes to how desensitized some people must be towards violence. Saw. Saw is an iconic horror film, directed by James Wan. The movie begins with two men locked inside of a rundown bathroom in complete darkness, both of them restrained by chains. Adam, the man lying in the bathtub, wakes up screaming after nearly being drowned, and he finds out he's not alone when he hears another voice through the dark. The second man, Lawrence, manages to turn the lights on, and much to their horror, the two face each other from opposite sides of the room, with a dead body in the middle. The dead man in the middle is holding a revolver and a tape recorder. Adam and Lawrence then discover disturbing cassettes. The cassettes explain the rules of a deadly game, in which they come to find out that they're the new victims of Jigsaw, a sadistic killer mastermind who's been infamous for his brutal murders. Jigsaw didn't murder people directly. He instead manipulated them, forcing them into life or death situations where the victims were pressured to doubt each other, always trapped into elaborate scenarios crafted to test their will to live. He pushed them past their limits to make them prove how much they really want to survive. We eventually find out that Adam works as a freelance photographer. Meanwhile, Lawrence is a doctor. At a certain point in the movie, Lauren learns that he must kill Adam by Jigsaw's given time, or his daughter and wife will be murdered. As Adam and Lauren struggle, the movie reveals flashbacks of Jigsaw's previous games and his sadistic methods, showcasing how he forced people to see the value of their life through pain and suffering. As the plot thickens, betrayal and desperate acts to get out are played on screen. By the end, the climax reveals that the alleged dead guy in the room is Jigsaw himself, the mastermind who made sure the two men would suffer and will now seal Adam's fate with his own hands. Perfect Blue. The film Perfect Blue was created by Satoshi Kon, a Japanese screenwriter and animator. The movie begins with the main character, Mima, who decides to announce her departure from her idol group, Chum, in pursuit of becoming an actress. Many of Mima's fans are sad, some even wondering why she would leave her well-crafted career as a singer to become an actress. One of Mima's extreme fans, Mamoru, even goes as far as stalking her. His obsession with Mima quickly made known. Mima finds an online website called Mima's Room, which displays recordings of her daily life, public diary entries from her perspective, and private thoughts in detail. Feeling disturbed, she talks to her manager Rumi about it, but Rumi dismisses her and tells her to ignore it. Eventually, Mima lands a minor role in a television drama, but thanks to her agent, she manages to get a bigger role instead. The bigger role, however, turns out to be significantly more disturbing, requiring her to film a full essay scene, which her manager Rumi disapproves of, yet Mima accepts. Following her new role, Mima goes on to film many scenes which take a toll on her mental health and stress her out, eventually causing her to regret leaving her idol life behind. Her regret for leaving Chom grows bigger as the band gains more popularity after her departure, and Mima's mental health continues to further spiral. She starts to experience paranoia over being stalked and suffers from psychosis, finding herself unable to distinguish hallucinations from reality as she falls down a deep rabbit hole of problems. A hallucination of her former idol self tears Mima apart, and the young girl continues to suffer in silence. Murders begin to happen, all surrounding people who are a part of Mima's acting career. Eventually, Mima finds bloodied clothes in her closet, suggesting she might be the one behind it. As Mima finishes shooting for the drama series, Mamoru, her stalker, corners her after everyone has left. He tries to essay and kill her, acting out on instructions which were emailed to him by the so-called real Mima to kill the imposter. Mima manages to fight him off. He's later finished off by the so-called real Mima for failing to eliminate the fake. Distressed and in shambles, Mima is eventually found by her manager Rumi, and Rumi takes Mima back to her room. Much to Mima's horror, Rumi's room is an exact replica of hers. This unravels that Rumi is the doppelganger who emailed Mamoru and impersonated her. Shoujo Tsubaki. Starting off as a manga written by Sohiro Maruo, the manga was eventually adapted into an animated film, directed by Hiroshi Harada, making it what it is today, widely known as Midori the Girl in the Freak Show. A live-action adaptation by Toriko was eventually released decades later, titled Midori the Camellia Girl, but today we're going to focus on the animated film. Shoujo Tsubaki is considered widely known for its brand of erogudo, which stands for erotic gore, in case you didn't know, and remains one of the most popular and controversial erogudo animations out there. The animation's official ban began around 1999, when officials seized and destroyed the film, blocked its import and exhibition within Japan, considering the film far too graphic and inappropriate. The director went through hell with it, but eventually Midori spread throughout the internet. Enough movie lore. Midori is a young girl who takes care of her sickly mother all by herself. Her father abandoned them, and Midori drops out of school to become a flower girl who sells her camellia flowers in the city. While in the city, Midori meets a much older man who tells her that if she ever needs help, she can go to him. Upon returning home, Midori finds out that her mother has passed away while alone, and there were now rats feasting on her. The scene shocks the poor girl, and now she's officially all alone with no one to turn to except the older man who offered to help her. Midori goes to the man's address and discovers that it turns out to be the Red Cat Circus, which is also known as a freak show. With nowhere else to go and no one to rely on, Midori is forced to work there. The workers there treat Midori horribly, abusing her. They use this poor young girl as a slave and as a toy for their own sick pleasure. As the Red Cat Circus starts to lose money, they invite a man with dwarfism to join them. His name is Matsumitsu, and he's an older man who instantly takes a liking to Midori. Masamitsu turns Midori into his assistant, and the two then become lovers, and he uses his trickery to protect Midori from the circus's freaks. Now that Masamitsu's in their circus, the Red Cat shows become successful. Unfortunately, his relationship with Midori becomes controlling and abusive. The movie has a lot going on, and you really have to watch it yourself if you want to know everything, since it's too much to cover in one short recap. Kite. Kite is a Japanese film which has been written and directed by Yasuomi Umetsu. It's considered controversial because of its crime, violence, and revenge. The story is about a girl named Sawa, a teenager whose parents were murdered when she was little. As a vulnerable and lone orphan, Sawa is taken in by corrupt police detectives and manipulated into becoming an assassin. They exploit her, taking advantage of her vulnerability to groom her into becoming their perfect tool for crimes, and even use her sexually. The film is well known for its graphic violence, and it also contains explicit sexual content. It is often criticized for its disturbing content and the showcase of its exploitation, yet it is also praised for the animation's well-liked style. Now, despite being reduced down to being nothing but a killing machine, Sawa keeps earrings allegedly made from the blood of her parents, a small personal reminder of the injustice she suffered, and a little something to help her cling to her former self. She was given those earrings after one of the detectives engaged with her sexually while he was her guardian. Sawa eventually meets Oburi, who's another young assassin, also controlled by the same detectives who roped her into their crimes. The two recognize each other's pain and isolation, forming a bond which quietly blossoms into a small romance between them. In the movie, Oburi reveals to Sawa that the detectives were the ones who killed her parents, and Sawa admits she already knew. The film gets darker again as Oburi tries to resign, but the detectives don't accept it, and they then decide to punish him beyond just beating and killing him. They violate Sawa and force him to watch every painful second of it. And unfortunately, this film does not have a happy ending. Live Freaky, Die Freaky. Live Freaky, Die Freaky is a film directed by John Roker. The film presents a satirical type of dystopian retelling of the Charles Manson murders, with a lot of exaggeration. The world is set in a post-apocalyptic future. The society has collapsed because of environmental destruction, and the survivors in it turn to an old book which is misinterpreted as a sacred text. The book gets treated like a messiah, and its passages inspire a cult-like following. Hence, how this led to a twisted retelling of the Manson family's crimes as if they were religious prophecies. At the center is Charlie, a puppet version of Charles Manson, portrayed as a high figure who convinces followers to commit horrific acts in his name. The story exaggerates and distorts historical events with crude jokes, graphic violence, and sexual content, all of which is supposed to be satire. The movie embraces a deliberately offensive style meant to unsettle, offend, and provoke. House of a Thousand Corpses. House of a Thousand Corpses is a movie directed by Rob Zombie. It's a gruesome horror film that's reminiscent of the old slasher movies and really shows brutality. The film's story begins with two young couples, our main characters, Jerry, Denise, Bill, and Mary. The two couples are on a road trip together, documenting the odd roadside attractions. They eventually stop at a silly gas station named Captain Spaulding's Gas Station, the Museum of Monsters and Madmen. This is where they learn about the legend of Dr. Satan, who was an insane surgeon rumored to have conducted cruel and sadistic experiments. Curious about the legend, and just like the brain cell lacking humans that they are, the two couples go out and look for this so-called Dr. Satan's resting place. While still lacking survival instincts, the couple's group soon pick up a hitchhiker named Baby, which is totally not suspicious, and Baby then leads them to their family's farmhouse. At the farmhouse, the two couples meet Baby's sadistic family, which consists of her sadistic brother Otis, her mom, and the grotesque, stinky Grandpa Hugo. Now regretting their earlier lack of survival instincts, the couples are finally drugged, tortured, and subjected to increasingly horrific acts, which we can't really talk about here. Let's just say Bill turns into a fish boy, while Jerry is... yeah, good luck to Jerry. Denise attempts to escape, but gets dragged underground with corpses and satanic imagery, where she finally sees the infamous Dr. Satan, who's performing his usual gruesome experiments. In the end, she flees to the surface, only to be stopped and picked up by Captain Spaulding from the gas station earlier, and this obviously implies she has never escaped. The Human Centipede. Oh, fuck. The Human Centipede, which I'm sure has already traumatized many of us, is a film directed by Tom Six. and unfortunately has 2 more sequences. It is well known for being grotesque, vile, and dehumanizing. The film is centered around a crazy doctor named Joseph Heider, and he's a retired German surgeon who was once famous for separating conjoined twins. Because of his fantastic work of separating those twins, he now thinks of creating some masterpiece by surgically connecting the bodies of people together to form a single digestive system. Much like a human centipede. Anyway, the story officially starts when 2 tourists named Lindsay and Jenny are stranded after their car breaks down. They seek help at Heider's secluded villa, only to be drugged and imprisoned as his potential centipede victims. Together with Lindsay and Jenny, Katsuro unfortunately ends up as the 3rd unfortunate victim. The deranged doc then reveals his gut-wrenching and horrifying plan to sew the 3 victims together, forming what he calls the human centipede. The procedure is carried out, and the human centipede is created. The poor victims have been connected just how they were told they would be. The 3 poor souls are then dehumanized further, humiliated, abused, and forced to endure hell. Oh, and the other 2 films aren't any better than the first. According to some online critiques, they're even worse. Some even describe the second film as a much longer and more grotesque movie than the first. The 3rd film is set in a prison. An actual prison with hundreds of inmates with centipede potential. Hostel. Hostel is a film directed by Eli Roth. It can be described as a brutal horror and thriller movie. It's said that the inspiration for it came from a website that Eli saw online. The website detailed events which involved an organization who kidnapped adults and children for the wealthy to hunt in Thailand. I can't confirm whether that is true and something that really happened in Thailand or not, but still, it does set up quite the horrific premise for the film. The story follows 3 friends, backpackers who travel across Europe together. Their names are Paxton, Josh, and Ollie. Together, they're traveling throughout the continent, searching for a fun time and parties. One night, they stay up late at a nightclub, which causes them to miss the curfew and remain locked outside of their hostel. After hearing all of the noise they were causing, a man allows them to crash at his apartment. The 3 young guys find themselves talking to him. Hearing about their wishes to party, the man convinces them that instead of going to Barcelona, they should instead visit a hostel in Slovakia since he knows a place filled with beautiful women who have a thing for foreigners. Tempted by the idea of hot women, the 3 guys board a train and make their way to the hostel the very next day. Upon arrival, the hostel initially seems luxurious, but Paxton notices odd behavior among the staff and other guests. The guys go crazy and party like there's no tomorrow, and the next day, their friend Ali has gone missing. As they're walking around the hostel, they receive a strange text from Ali, who hasn't been seen since the night they partied. While the 2 are talking about how strange it is, we get to see a scene of Ali being dismembered. Josh and Paxton party again, and Josh wakes up in a dungeon-like room, where his captor kills Josh. Paxton eventually gets into the building where Josh is, brought there by 2 women who obviously don't have a thing for him, and he catches a glimpse of the horrors being committed before he's captured and restrained. The movie has 2 endings, and in one ending, Paxton does escape the hostel but hears the voice of one of the killers, so he waits for him to get distracted and snatches his daughter, leaving the man scared and panicked over his child. The movie comes to an end with Paxton holding her on the train he boarded. In the other ending, Paxton waits for the killer to get off the train before cornering and murdering him. Freezer Baby. Freezer Baby is a bizarre film, if you can even call it that. It was directed by Gary Moronick and starred only Gary Moronick as an actor. It's one of those things on the internet which you see that make you go, what the fuck? The film is 41 minutes and 41 seconds long. The film is exactly what its title suggests. Freezer Baby. It's filled with disturbing content I can't even mention here. Keep in mind, the title isn't random. In fact, it's central to the story, and the whole movie is just plain gross. A Serbian film. Ending with a cult classic and the movie which comes to mind when you think of disturbing movies. A Serbian film is one of those movies which has made it to many people's lists. The director of this movie, Srđan Spasojević, did a really good job at making people's stomachs twist with this one. The film literally starts off with the main character, Milo's son, watching his father's tapes. And here, we find out that our main character is an ex-adult star who was very well known for his skills, let's say. He now sort of retired from the adult industry. Milos lives with his son and his wife Maria. He's also struggling financially, and he meets up with an ex-colleague who's trying to get him back into the industry. She offers him to shoot for a man named Vukmir, and albeit hesitant, Milos ends up accepting because he needs to support his family. After meeting the director for the movie, Milos is still kept in the dark about the actual content of the project. As filming begins, things take a disturbing turn. The scenes become increasingly violent and depraved, involving abuse and snuff. Milos eventually realizes he's been dragged into a world of snuff films. He obviously freaks out and states that he quits, but it's too late. The director tries to convince Milos to stay, and he does that by showing him this footage, which I don't think anything else on this list even comes close to. The fact that a human could even think of this is disturbing beyond words. Later, Milos finds out that he has been drugged, controlled, and filmed committing horrific acts without his full awareness. The rest of the movie descends into a nightmare as Milos uncovers the extent of what happened while he was under the influence. Horrific violence against people he knows and loves. The final scenes reveal a horrific climax involving his own family. By the end, Milos and his family are broken, both physically and emotionally. The movie ends with Milos and his family cuddling, and he decides to end it for all three of them. And you wish it would end just there. Then a new director appears in the house, and after seeing Milos and his family dead, he starts the production of another film. And if you've stayed this long, listening to all of these entries, knowing the sick things that people can create, we can guess what that film is going to be.